Howdy and welcome guys to episode 29 of the 240SX2JZ swap. In today's episode we're doing a complete restoration, a total overhaul of the suspension on this 240SX front and rear. So let's get right down to business. So the first thing we have to do is remove this dust cover here. Then we can go ahead and take out the cotter pin. Ah, there it is. Break that spindle nut loose. There we go. There we go. And now we can start taking off the front brake caliper. Oh yes. I'm hanging it from a ratchet strap here to take some stress off the brake line. And then we can pull off the rotor and the wheel hub. Now, make sure you save this fancy little alignment washer that was inside the hub. You're gonna need that. But this can go in the trash. And I know it's kind of hard to see, but this bearing in here, it's got a ton of play, the old one. So it's good that we're replacing this because it was definitely on its way out there. This dust shield took some grunt work to get off, but eventually we got it. Nice. I'm just removing the ABS speed sensor here because we're not running ABS anymore, so there goes that. Now here we're removing the outer tie rod cotter pin. And now we're popping the tie rod end off with a ball joint removal tool. Now it's time to remove the strut, starting with the two nuts and bolts at the bottom of the strut. Oh, look at this, the boot is just falling apart in there. Now what I'm doing is removing the Swaybar end links from the lower control arm. And then to finally remove the front spindle, I just have to remove this cotter pin, undo the nut holding it to the lower control arm, and we're good to go. Oh, there we go, very nice. Now I'm unbolting the front tension rod and the lower control arm from the subframe. I mean, just look at these boots. I mean, heck, look at that. There's no grease left. Holy cow. Now it's time to remove the tie rods. I'm starting by removing the clip at the far end of the boot. There we go. Then we can go ahead and slide the boot off. There we go. Then there's a retention clip on the inner tie rod that you will have to hammer out in order to unscrew the tie rod. Now at this point I didn't have a tie rod removal tool, so I had to get creative with using a jack and an adjustable wrench to get some leverage. And now that the front suspension is completely disassembled, I took this time to clean up the front wheel wells and repaint them with some Rust-Oleum bed liner. In the end, I think it turned out pretty good. If you plan on lowering your car, there are two seams in the fender wells that you're going to want to hammer flat so that your tires don't get caught on them. Here's the one seam completed, and up top here is the other. Now it's time to get everything reassembled, and I got new OEM hardware to get everything back together. Part numbers will be below. We're going to start by installing our new tie rods. I have Z32 Inner Tie Rods, as well as SPL tie rod ends, and a new boot to put everything back together. We're going to start the installation by measuring the old tie rods and then adjusting the new ones to the same length. Now that the new tie rods are adjusted, I'm just taking some measurements here because to install them, we're going to have to disassemble the tie rod ends, and we want to make sure we can put everything back to where it was before when it was all adjusted. Don't forget to slide on your new retaining clip first before you install the tie rod. I'm putting some blue Loctite on the tie rod threads just as a precautionary measure, and then we can thread it into the steering rack. This is a tie rod tool I rented from AutoZone, which helps you get your tie rods to the proper torque. Now we're greasing up the tie rod so that we can slide the boot on. And then we can go ahead and install our retaining wire. Don't forget this little O-ring that slides onto the outer part of the boot. Now we can install our tie rod ends, starting with the jam nut, and then threading on our tie rod end. Measuring to the same length as we measured before, adjusting, and then snugging up that jam nut. Not torquing it, just snugging it up for now. Now we can go ahead and install our brand new OEM lower control arms along with some fresh hardware. Now one thing I want to note is that you're not supposed to torque down anything with a rubber bushing until the car is on the ground and it has load applied to it. So this bolt right here, for instance, has a rubber bushing through the lower control arm, and we're not going to torque that down until the car is on the ground. Okay, so now that we have our tie rods and our lower control arms in up front, it's time to finally install our coilovers. And a little extra piece, what I have right here is a front strut brace from P2M, so that'll add some extra rigidity up front. But just so you guys know what we're dealing with, we have some Feal coilovers all the way around. All we need to do is adjust the ride height, and then we can pop it in the car. And before we adjust the coilovers, we're gonna pop off the bottom collars, apply anti-seize, and that will help us prevent corrosion. Now I'm measuring the OEM struts and adjusting the new coils to the same length. Can't forget about these bad boys. There's some dress-up bolt nuts for the coils. I think it'll add some nice little pizzazz to the engine bay here. Look at that, that is looking prime. Before we go ahead and throw those spindles back on, I went ahead and gave them a fresh coat of Rust-Oleum black paint. Look at these freshly painted spindles, they're looking good. What I'm doing here is just getting the spindle loosely attached to all of our suspension components before we torque everything down. And it's hard to see here, but I'm installing a cotter pin to that castle nut. And this threaded shaft I'm installing onto the spindle is the last step you need to do to install those SPL tie rod ends. And now we can install our SPL tension rods up front. Again, I'm adjusting them to the same length as the stock ones. And because this doesn't have a rubber or poly bushing, we don't have to wait for it to be on the ground to torque it to spec. And now it's time to install our brand new 5 lug hubs. First, I'm going to apply some anti-seize to the spindle threads, and then I'm going to apply some grease to the spindle shaft. Don't forget to install your alignment washer before you put on that spindle nut. And just thread that on here, and we are going to torque it to 140 foot-pounds. So wish me luck on that one.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there.
And then we can go ahead and cotter pin this baby up. And in episode 28 of this series, I installed a big brake kit up front, so if you're interested, the link is on the screen now. But at this point, the suspension up front is pretty much complete, and we can finally move on to getting started with the rear. And just like up front, we're gonna remove that cotter pin, then the axle nut, and then the brake calipers.
Nice. Big old muscle, baby. Let's go.
Now back here, you're also gonna have to detach the brake pad mechanism from the rear knuckle. Now we can go ahead and remove the rotor. Now what I'm doing here is removing the 4 bolts that hold the wheel hub on that are at the back of the knuckle. Once those are removed, we can give it a couple love taps and it should pop right off.
Cool.
Nice. This is where an impact driver is your friend. You're just gonna go at every bolt and nut that attaches to that rear knuckle.
No.
Dude, I have no idea what this is, but it looks like there's been like something welded, like a big old chunk welded to it. That's weird as heck. Go out of the way. Here I'm removing the rear toe rod from the rear knuckle, making use of that ball joint removal tool again. Here I'm unbolting the bottom of the rear strut. And now everything is coming apart. Ooh. And here I'm unbolting the top of the rear strut. At this point, that strut can just pop right out.
Ow. Ooh. That hurt.
And here I am removing the cotter pin and the nut from the lower control arm to the rear knuckle.
Nice. Oh yeah, baby.
And now I'm just unbolting all of the other suspension components from the rear of the car, starting with the lower control arm. So I'm gonna undo the axle from the differential. It's kind of dark back there and I can't get you guys like a good angle on that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do it, but it's 6 bolts that just attaches to the half shafts on the differential. So I'm gonna do that and then we'll pull the axle out. And what I'm explaining here in way too much detail is that because this is a high-cast equipped car, the rear toe arms are attached much differently than on non-high-cast equipped cars. So this part is going to be a little bit different than probably everybody else out there, so I'm sorry about the difference there. So we have here the spindle from the rear, and what we're going to do is you can see that there are some rubber bushings right here and here, and there's a ball joint right here, and we're going to remove all of those. So the first thing we need to work on is this ball joint. There is, if you can see, a little C-clip in the back there, and I'm gonna take some C-clip pliers and see if I can't get that out. So there it goes. So here I tried to use a ball joint press from AutoZone to remove those bushings, to no avail, so I just had a friend do it at his shop who has a hydraulic press. And of course we're gonna give these puppies a fresh coat of paint, just like the fronts. Okay, now that we're done the disassembly in the rear end of the car, it's time to start putting some stuff back together, and we're gonna start by installing the axles. Now I'm upgrading the axles on this car, so we're not gonna put the stock ones back in. Right here, I have one of the half shafts that came out of the differential, and I'll show you how I got that out in a minute. But the reason I took these out is because the new upgraded axles from Driveshaft shop, they have an adapter plate that fits onto here that we're gonna have to torque onto the stock stub axle, or the half axle here. So I have to take these out of the car, go and torque down the new adapter plates to them, and then reinstall them, and then we can put the axles, like fully install the axles. So I'm gonna show you how I took the half axles out, or some people call it a stub axle, and after that we'll go get the new adapter plates on them. So let's do it. All right guys, we've got our stub axles here from the differential along with our adapters for the axles. We're just gonna torque these down and then we'll be able to install these stub shafts back into the diff, and then we can finally install the full axle shaft. So let's get going. And to reinstall these, you just slide them back into the differential and give them a couple whacks with a hammer. All right guys, now that the half shafts are in, we can finally install our new axles. These are from Driveshaft shop and they're rated up to 800 horsepower. So we should be just fine with these. I'm really excited to throw these on and make sure they all fit and stuff. Of course, here are our old ones, and just take note that the right and the left side are different lengths. So they have different lengths on the new ones. So we just have to make sure we match up the, the right length to the right side. So I'm gonna go in and throw them on. Look at that. Woo! Now we can install our SPL rear toe arms, and just like before, we measure the stock ones and then adjust the new ones to length. And I'm really sorry for the poor lighting. I was doing this at night with a flashlight, so please bear with me here. We've got the toe arm, we got it installed. It's just hanging out there. All right guys, it's time to finally install the lower control arms in the rear here, and we're not throwing the regular OEM ones back on. We have some pretty cool NISMO ones. I don't really know what the difference between the OEM and the NISMO version is. They look pretty darn similar, but they were the same price, so why not get the cooler silver one, right? And just remember, because these have rubber bushings, we're not gonna be torquing these bolts down just yet. Now we can install our rear coilovers, and just like the front, we're going to take those collars off and apply some anti-seize. And here I am jumping into the car to get those two nuts at the top of the coilover threaded on.
I got that nut in. We're good.
These rear Swaybar bushings have seen much better days, so we're going to replace them with Poly-Bushings. So here are some energy suspension Poly-Bushings for the rear subframe. We're going to lube them up, of course, before we throw them on, and then we can just go ahead and reinstall. I owe you guys an apology. My camera battery died while I was doing something, so I didn't get to film it, but I'll show you the end result here. So what's new in the back is that we now have an ISR brake line, just the same as up front, as well as a brand new Duralast remanufactured rear brake caliper. Now I'm installing some GK Tech Poly-Bushings into the rear knuckles. They recommend you cut them in half to install them, oddly enough, so here I am doing that. I lube them up a little bit, press them into the knuckle, and then I used a bench vise in order to press in the metal shaft to the bushings. There's 3 of these bushings per knuckle, so if you're going to do this, make sure you get 6 bushings in total. And now that those bushings are installed, we can go ahead and install our 5 lug hubs to the knuckle here, along with our dust shield. Here we are installing our SPL rear traction arms, again adjusting to the same length as the stock ones. All right, guys, it's time to install the spindle. This is big. We're gonna grease up those axle threads first, and then we can go ahead and install that rear knuckle. Oh, sorry I'm blocking your view, guys. It's quite strenuous. Now here I am just reattaching all of our suspension components to our newly installed spindle. And here we are just degreasing some Enjuku Racing slotted rear brake rotors. And here I am trying to install some brake pads. They were extremely tough to get in. It took me about 45 minutes in total, but we ended up getting it. All right, that took a lot longer than anticipated, but we are all brake padded up and ready to throw it on the car. So let's do it. Alright guys, our remanufactured calipers are on. What I didn't film was me hooking up the e-brake line to the bottom of the caliper. That was pretty simple, but it was tedious and it kind of took me a long time because I'm not too good with these things. So anyway, that is what I was doing off camera, but the caliper is on now. And the last thing that we need to do to the rear end of the suspension is install the upper control arms. So I'm going to go grab those and we'll get those adjusted, throw them on. And here are some beautiful upper control arms from SPL that we'll be installing. And just like everything before, we're measuring the stock ones and then adjusting the SPL ones to length. We're also going to be installing an Eccentric Lockout Kit from SPL at the rear of the car so that under hard cornering, our alignment doesn't change. So here I am installing those Eccentric Lockout Kit bolts along with the upper control arm. And that is the rear suspension complete. Obviously things still need to be torqued down, but we'll do that once the car is on the ground. But if I do say so myself, that is looking pretty snazzy back there. And to top it all off, we've got some 17x9 plus 22 offset Enkei RPF 1s, along with some 200 tread wear autocross racing tires. All right, with the suspension done and the wheels attached, it's time to finally put this thing on the ground, so let's see what happens. So the ride height still needs to be adjusted a bit, and the front tires have a little bit of poke, which will need to be worked on, but all in all, I think it looks pretty good. At this point, I had the car sitting on a ramp so I could get under the car and torque everything down while load was being presented to those suspension components. And here I am leaving you guys off with me pulling it out of the garage for the very first time. In the next episode, we're going to go ahead and get an alignment, and then we can finally start ripping this thing. So thank you guys for watching, and please stick around for more.
Thank you.